He was 9 when hatred was given a shape. Not a tantrum, not a mood, an oath. In a darkened sanctuary after the First Punic War, Hannibal Barca drew his son to the altar and made him touch the god's fire. The boy repeated the words as his father willed it. So long as he lived, he would be no friend to Rome. Polybius, the sober Greek who disliked legends, records the vow. It is the flint that sparks everything that follows. Hamilcar's rage had reasons. Carthage had lost Sicily then, humiliated by Roman opportunism, Sardinia and Corsica as well, and paid an indemnity that bled the treasury. At home, merchants in the council clipped military wings. Abroad, Rome's new confidence weighed like an iron hand on the sea. Hamilcar answered not with speeches, but with direction. He marched west to put down the mercenary war, and then in 237 BCE, he turned to Iberia, where silver lived in veins, and men who knew hills could be made into soldiers. If Carthage would not give him a state, he would build one. Iberia became workshop and refuge. Hamilcar trained and campaigned. The boy watched and learned. When Hamilcar fell in battle, Hasdrubal the Fair kept the design, founded Carthage, later Carthago Nova, and stitched alliances with Iberian chiefs, Rome, wary, fixed a boundary by treaty, the Ebro River. South of it, Barcid power could grow. North of it, it must not. On paper, balance; in practice, postponement. By 221 BCE, the army chose the oath-made flesh. Hannibal Barca was 26, hardened in marches, quick to praise courage, quicker to remember a map. He inherited men loyal to the family, mines that paid for mercenaries, and a coastline that could feed an army. He also inherited the treaty line, and the knowledge that treaties are ladders or ropes depending on who climbs them. Hannibal's first moves were local and cold. He campaigned against tribes that blocked his logistics, moving with speed and exact memory for ground. He married Iberia to Carthage by victory and coin, and he watched Rome watching him. The Republic had a habit of calling distant cities friends and allies whenever it suited a future claim. South of the Ebro, one such city shone like bait, Saguntum. It sat within the Barcid sphere, but enjoyed Roman patronage that Rome had no right to give, and every intention to use. This is the hinge, the oath's heat cooling into method. Hamilcar had forged a private empire to escape timid politicians and Roman rules. Hasdrubal had varnished it with diplomacy. Hannibal sharpened it. Iberian silver bought elephants and grain. Iberian loyalty bought time. The treaty fixed the river, but not the future. A boy had promised to deny Rome friendship. A man prepared to test where that promise ended and where war began. The fuse did not yet burn in 221, but it was coiled, measured, and close to a city whose fall would make the oath audible from the Alps to the sea. Iberia did not welcome them. They made Iberia obey. Hamilcar Barca crossed in 237 BCE with veterans, debt, and a plan. Turn a scarred coastline into a war engine Rome could not regulate. He began where power begins, at the veins. The silver of the Sierra Morena and Cartagena would fund autonomy from the timorous merchants in Carthage, and by the only loyalty that never lies, paid soldiers. Polybius dates the arc. Archaeology at Cartagena's mines and harbor walls shows the muscle behind the text. The method was ruthless and precise. Towns that bowed kept their councils. Towns that fought learned Punic words under new magistrates. Hostages secured treaties. Taxes were taken in bullion and grain. Hamilcar moved like a carpenter. Cut, fit, brace, until a Barcid framework gripped the peninsula's east and south. When he fell in battle, circa 229 BCE, Hasdrubal the Fair kept the blueprint and added polish, diplomacy, city building, and law. He founded Cort Hadasht, Carthago Nova, on a tongue of rock with a double harbor and 5 defensible hills, a capital for a private imperium. Coins bearing Punic legends and Iberian symbols tied accounting to allegiance. A governor's staff could be read in silver. Manpower followed money. Iberian and Celtiberian infantry supplied fierce shock troops, Balearic slingers, leather pouches, almond-sized lead, gave the line a stinging edge. Libya-Phoenician spearmen formed a drilled corps. Cavalry deals reached across the straits to Numidia, where horsemen could harass, feint, and finish. Mercenary does not mean faithless. It means conditional. The Barkids met the condition. Regular pay, a share of plunder, and a commander who led from dust, not porticos. Hasdrubal's genius was to make this look legal. He sealed marriages with local elites, adjudicated disputes through Punic and native law, and, when Rome's alarm bells rang, signed the Ebro Treaty, circa 226 BCE, fixing a river as a boundary for Barcid expansion. On parchment, prudence. In practice, permission to harden everything south of the line forts, watched passes. Roads stitched depots to ports. Elephant parks near the Guadalquivir trained the living banners that turned Italian spines to water. Winter quarters rehearsed summer campaigns. Rations standardized, signals drilled. Officers rotated so that orders did not depend on one voice. This was not secession from Carthage, so much as insulation. The council across the sea could posture. The Barcid state could act. Silver turned into stipends. Stipends into discipline. Discipline into speed. And speed was the one commodity Rome never priced correctly. When Hasdrubal was assassinated in 221 BCE, the army did what armies do when a dynasty has delivered. It chose continuity. Hannibal, Hamilcar's son, took command by acclamation. 26, scarred by marches, fluent in the peninsula's tongues, and already thinking beyond rivers. The Ledger of Iberia reads like a preface to war, a capital that minted obedience, mines that fed treasuries, client towns that could lift spears on a signal, and a treaty that drew a neat line no one intended to honor forever. North of that line sat a Roman ally, with a vulnerable wall and a provocative friendship, Saguntum. South of it, a commander raised on an altar oath counted elephants, and weak Siberia was forged. The hammer would fall where the map invited it. Hannibal chose a wall and turned it into a message. Saguntum, rich, quarrelsome, and south of the Ebro, stood where treaties grew ambiguous and ambition grew honest. By the pact Rome had struck with Hasdrubal, the Ebro Treaty, circa 226 BCE, Carthage would not push north of the river. Saguntum lay well to the south but had secured Roman friendship, the kind of alliance that fit in a senator's mouth better than on a map. In 219 BCE, Hannibal picked that ambiguity like a lock. He began as a governor, not a raider. Envoys from Saguntum had prosecuted pro-Carthaginian nobles. Punic allies called for redress. Hannibal framed the dispute as Iberian justice, not Roman diplomacy. Local wrongs, local remedy. Rome tied up in Illyria sent words, not legions. Polybius sketches the sequence. Roman embassies first to Hannibal, then to Carthage. Warnings issued, time squandered. The Barcid answer was a circumvallation. The siege was an education in patience and steel. Towers of timber crept forward, rams thudded, sappers gnawed at foundations while Saguntine counterminers fought with lamps and short blades below the streets. Daylight saw sorties, citizens in bronze and linen lunging from the breaches. Night saw repairs and funerals. Hannibal was no distant figurehead. At one assault, he took a heavy wound. The sources disagree, thigh or shoulder, and the camp learned how a man commands through pain. Inside the walls, factions burned as hot as pitch. Pro-Roman leaders argued for endurance. The poor demanded food. Gold and jewelry were melted to buy grain and hire Iberian auxiliaries who never arrived. 8 months ground down courage into calculation. Rome's logic was legal. Hannibal's was operational. The Senate held that an attack on a Roman ally, treaty line be damned, meant war. Hannibal held that Saguntum's alliance postdated the Ebro Pact, that the city had wronged Carthaginian friends, and that Rome had no standing south of the river. It had itself declared the limit. The law in such cases is a sword that cuts whichever arm wields it. The end was famine before flame. When stores failed, desperation turned sacred. Ancient writers tell of civic treasures stripped from temples to buy time. Defenders burned themselves and their wealth to deny plunder. It did not matter. The breach widened. Streets became funnels. Saguntum fell, and with it fell the polite fiction that Iberia and Italy were separate theaters. Hannibal parceled the spoils according to the canons of victory. Officers rewarded, troops paid, allies satisfied. The treasury filled for what he knew would come next. Rome finally sent the embassy that history remembers. In Carthage's council chamber, the Roman spokesman, tradition makes him Q. Fabius, gathered his toga into a fold and said he carried peace and war. Choose, the Sufates answered, whichever you prefer. War, came the reply. We accept, came the fate. Saguntum was not a detour. It was a detonator. It proved the Iberian machine worked, that Rome could be forced to speak without acting, and that a commander with an oath in his blood could move the world by breaking one city's wall. The Second Punic War did not begin in the Alps. It began here, with a legal question asked at spear point and answered in ash. He aimed an army at the impossible and made the mountains blink. In the spring of 218 BCE, while Rome counted fleets and timetables, Hannibal counted hours and passes. He broke camp in Iberia with a force Polybius tallies at roughly 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 elephants, then trimmed by garrisons and reluctant tribes to nearer 50,000 foot and 9,000 horse. By the time the Pyrenees spat him into Gaul, the numbers matter because they will vanish, and because his plan assumes loss as a cost of strategy. The Pyrenees were not a wall so much as a sieve. Harsh country, hostile tribes, manageable with speed and hostages. He negotiated, fought, swapped hostages, left colonists, and pressed on to the lower Rhone, where a fresh problem waited, a wide, fast river and hostile Volcae guarding the eastern bank. Rome, expecting a naval war, had sent P. Cornelius Scipio by sea. His son would one day remember all of this, but Scipio was late to the crossing. Hannibal would not be. The crossing reads like a field manual. Timber cut upstream, ferried rafts lashed into floating causeways, corked skins for swimmers, light troops first to secure a bridgehead. Meanwhile, a picked detachment under Hanno marched upriver, crossed at night, and fell on the Volcae rear at dawn. Panic opened the bank. Rafts and boats poured the army across. The elephants came last on broad rafts strewn with earth to mimic ground. Some panicked into the water and swam, trunks high like snorkels. When Scipio finally reached Massalia, Marseille, Hannibal was already gone upriver. The Roman turned back to Italy, leaving his brother to hold Spain. The initiative, geography's most precious metal, belonged to the Carthaginian. Then the road grew teeth, north along the Rhone, east toward the Allobroge, where a dynastic quarrel, Polybius again, bought safe passage. One chief outbid another with guides, grain, and goodwill. After that, no more favors. The Alps rose not as scenery, but as verdict. Narrow ledges gouged into ice, rockfall like artillery, ambushes from men who knew every fold of the slope. The famous tale of heated vinegar cracking rock comes from Livy's later embroidery. Polybius, closer to events, speaks instead of cutting new traverses and shoring paths where landslides had erased them. Both agree on the scale of misery. 15 days above the world, snow that blinded, wind that bit through Iberian wool, horses screaming off ledges, men sitting to rest and never rising. Hannibal, wounded earlier in Iberia, hardened by habit, stood on a promontory and pointed, "Italy there, the Po plain wide and fat. We are scaling Rome's walls." Leadership is sometimes a map drawn with a finger. He emerged not triumphant, but present. Circa 20,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry skeletal with cold. A handful of elephants like walking myths. It looked like ruin. It was, in fact, arrival. The Ticinus and Trebia waited. Scipio and Sempronius waited. A republic that had laughed at rumors of elephants on ice now bled where its rivers met. The march had been improbable by design. Rome had planned a war at the edges. Hannibal had moved the edge. He announced himself with hooves, not legions. Near the little river Ticinus, late 218 BCE, Hannibal's first clash on Italian soil was not a set-piece battle, but a test of reflex. Polybius calls it a cavalry action. Numidian light horse and Iberian heavy Gallic riders against Roman and allied equities. Under the consul Publius Cornelius Scipio, Hannibal stayed off the melee's edge, commanding. The Numidians did what Rome's cavalry was not built to answer. Swarm, feint flight, wheel on flanks, jab with javelins, vanish, return. In the press, Scipio was wounded and unhorsed. Tradition adds the scene that would echo across a generation. A 17-year-old son, P. Cornelius Scipio, the future Africanus, cutting through with a handful of troopers to drag his father clear. Tactically small, psychologically immense. Rome learned that this enemy's first blow fell from the saddle and from the sides. The consul fell back across the Pedus Po toward Placentia, writing caution in his own blood. Rome answered caution with appetite. The co-consul, Tiberius Sempronius Longus, fresh from Sicily and hungry for a consumable victory before his term expired, took command of a swollen army, 2 consular forces together in theater, and went hunting. Hannibal had already chosen the field, the Trebia, a winter river on a flat where elephants and horse could run, with a brush-choked gully to hide a knife. At dawn, Hannibal sent the Numidians again, needling raids against the Roman camp to sting Sempronius into haste. The Roman obliged spectacularly. Without a proper breakfast, without warming fires, legionaries were driven into the chest-deep Trebia, wool tunics soaking, shield bosses icing, breath torn from lungs. Across the bank, Hannibal's men had eaten, rubbed down with olive oil. A mundane detail the sources cherish because it shows a commander thinking. With the weather, the Carthaginian line presented a pliant Iberian Gallic center, veterans from Africa on either wing, elephants anchoring shock, and, most importantly, Mago, with circa 2,000 picked men lying invisible in that gully. The first collision favored Roman habit. Even cold and hungry, the dense manipular mass drove in the center, and Sempronius tasted the story he wanted. Then the edges started to talk. Carthaginian heavy cavalry smashed the Roman horse off one flank. Numidians fixed and frayed the other. With the Roman wings in trouble and the center shouldering forward into a crescent, Hannibal raised the signal. Mago burst from cover into the Roman rear. What had been a push became a choke. Men packed too tight to wheel, standards tangling, Pila fouled by wet leather, command voices drowned by the iron hiss of breath in cold air. Numbers are argued in every generation. Polybius allows that about 10,000 Romans hacked a path straight through the soft center and escaped in order. Livy paints heavier slaughter. All agree on shape. Roman cavalry routed, infantry flanks chewed, elephants and horse sealing flight, the river swallowing many who tried to swim weighted by mail. Sempronius retreated to Placentia, claiming a storm had ended the fight. Italy knew better. In a month, Hannibal had blooded a consul at Ticinus and broken an army at the Trebia. With winter as his silent ally, Rome still had men, money, and pride. It had one less illusion. The mist killed them before any sword did. At dawn on the shore of Lake Trasimene in 217 BCE, the earth breathed out a cold, thick vapor that wrapped the Roman column like a winding sheet. Consul Gaius Flaminius, smarting from Hannibal's raids and from his own pride, drove 25,000 men into the Narrows without scouts. Certain he was chasing a fleeing barbarian. He was marching into a room with only one door. Hannibal had set it the night before. The road pinched between the lake's water on one side and wooded ridges on the other. On those slopes, he hid his entire army. Iberian and Gallic infantry staggered along the heights. African veterans masked behind crests. Numidian and Iberian cavalry sealing the ends. No straight line, no visible campfires, no dust, only stillness and the soft lap of water. He waited until the last maniples had filed into the choke, and the tail of the column touched the gate of air. The signal, some ancient writers say a trumpet, others the sudden roar of voices, fell from above and behind, not ahead. The ambush struck as sound, then as weight. To the Romans it came from everywhere at once. Javelins shearing out of fog, stones and men tumbling down the slopes, horse bells rattling at the rear where escape should have been. The legionary virtue of order had no place to stand. Units were in march column, not battle line. Standards vanished, commands dissolved into coughs of wet iron, and the thud of bodies on sodden ground. Flaminius tried to brace the van and wheel it into formation. He never found a flank to dress on. In the crush he was recognized and cut down. Livy names an Insubrian horseman as the killer, his corpse swallowed by the same gray that hid the living. The center buckled toward the lake. Laden with mail and shields, men stumbled into the shallows and drowned within arm's reach of shore, dragged by comrades who could neither see nor turn. Polybius calls it a massacre in 3 hours. The figure survives because it matches the feeling. There was no battle to extend, only killing to finish. Numbers quarrel as always. Roughly 15,000 Romans killed, perhaps 10,000 captured, a few thousand slicing out through gaps in the hills. But the geometry is uncontested, an army annihilated without a line ever forming. The day after, Maharbal overtook a 4,000-strong Roman cavalry detachment, hurrying to join Flaminius, and destroyed it. Punctuation after the period. News shattered Rome. Women blocked gates seeking names. The Senate banned public mourning to keep the city from breaking. Then soberly, the Republic reached for an older tool. It suspended normal politics and appointed a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus. His verdict on Trasimene was the one lesson the fog wanted taught. Against this enemy, do not give battle on his terms. While Rome learned to wait, Hannibal had already taught them why. He saved Rome by refusing to be Roman. After Lake Trasimene, 217 BCE, when fog and fury erased a consul and his army, the Republic set aside pride and elected a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus. He was not dazzling. He was deliberate. Against Hannibal, whose genius fed on haste, Fabius prescribed hunger and time. He read the field with an accountant's cruelty. Rome could raise new legions. Carthage's general could not conjure new veterans in Italy. So Fabius shadowed rather than struck, holding the high ground, camping on ridges that denied cavalry room to whirl, and sending skirmishers to cut grazing, seize wells, and snap the foraging lines that kept an army alive. When Hannibal moved, Fabius moved on a parallel shelf of hills. When Hannibal halted to plunder, Fabius pitched camp close enough to threaten, too far to be trapped. No set-piece engagements, no glory. The policy, cunctatio, delay, looked like fear to citizens who measured virtue in charges and trophies. Livy preserves the sneers. Cunctator, the slow coach. Markets cursed him while barns thanked him. Yet the ledger changed. Hannibal's march through Campania bit into scorched fields. Allied towns learned to evacuate stores behind Roman palisades. Raids brought fire, not food. At Falernus, when Hannibal seemed caught between mountains and Roman posts, he escaped at night by driving oxen with flaming bundles tied to their horns up a pass, a living constellation that pulled Roman pickets off the real exit. Rome howled that Fabius had let him go. Fabius answered that he had kept Rome. Pressure mounted inside the command. The master of horse, Monsieur Minucius Rufus, stung by mockery of Fabian caution, grabbed a chance skirmish near Gerunium and bloodied Carthaginian foragers. The people, drunk on one good afternoon, voted Minucius equal imperium, two dictators in all but name. Minucius hurried into a carefully baited low ground. Hannibal's wings closed. The Roman line began to fold. Then the delayer moved like a knife. Fabius descended from the heights, struck Hannibal's flank, and pulled Minucius out before the trap became a reckoning. Minucius dismissed his camp and saluted Fabius as father. The nickname Cunctator hardened from insult into doctrine. Polybius, cooler than Livy, notes what the program bought: recovered allies, time to retrain legions, and a Rome that learned to absorb blows without breaking. Fabius even argued against ransoming captives on Hannibal's terms, forcing the state to pay in discipline rather than coin. His strategy was not mercy. It was mathematics. Each day without a pitched battle was a day Rome grew and Hannibal shrank. Horses worn down, Numidian scouts dead and irreplaceable, Gallic enthusiasm ebbing when loot thinned. The city hated waiting, but waiting worked. When Fabius laid down the dictatorship, Rome possessed what it lacked after Trasimene. A plan deny the genius his stage, starve him, shadow him, never play his game. The Republic would forget that lesson at Cannae. It would learn it again, harder, slower, and survive because an unfashionable man taught it first. They packed themselves so tight they could not breathe, and Hannibal taught them how men die without air. On the 2nd of August, 216 BCE, near the Apulian village of Cannae, Rome put more infantry on one field than any army in its history. 8 legions plus allies, approximately 80,000 foot and approximately 6,000 horse. under the alternating command of L. Aemilius Paulus and G. Terentius Varro. Polybius says the decision to mass depth was deliberate, turn the Roman center into a battering ram that would smash the Carthaginian line by weight alone. It was also the decision that made slaughter a geometry. Hannibal answered with stagecraft and steel. He set his Gauls and Iberians in a shallow convex arc, bellies forward, weakest where Rome intended to hit, kept his African veterans echeloned back on both flanks, and anchored the wings with superior cavalry. Heavy Iberian Gallic horse on one side, Hasdrubal, Numidians on the other, Maharbal. The Aufidus wind blew dust across the Romans' faces. The constricted ground pinned their masses tight. Varro, commanding that day, advanced the deep column. The first collision felt like triumph. The Carthaginian center buckled and fell back, not broken, luring. While legionaries pushed inward, their formation narrowed. The arc became a bowl, then a pocket. On the flanks, the Africans wheeled inward like hinges, disciplined veterans with long thrusting spears hitting exposed Roman sides. At the same time, Hasdrubal's horse smashed the outnumbered Roman cavalry, then galloped behind the Roman line instead of pursuing, a tactical restraint. Livy can't help but admire. The Numidians kept the remaining allied horse busy, then joined the rear attack. With front, flanks, and back closed, the Romans stood encircled, Polybius's famous double envelopment complete. What followed was not battle, but compression. In the vast overdeepened center, men were so packed they couldn't raise swords. Some died by suffocation, many by friendly crush before Carthaginian blades found them. Paulus died fighting near the river. Varro escaped with a remnant to Canusium. Rings from senators' fingers, a bucketful, says Livy, were poured on a Carthaginian council floor as inventory of the slain ancient tolls vary. Polybius's sober figure of approximately 70,000 Roman and allied dead and captured remains the anchor. With 50,000 plus, killed a credible median Carthaginian losses were modest by comparison, perhaps 6,000. Rome staggered. 80 senators, roughly a third, counting those serving in the ranks, fell. Towns defected, most famously Capua. In the south, Bruttians and some Samnites. In Sicily, winds shifted. Panic in the city reached for rights older than pride. 2 Greeks and 2 Gauls buried alive in the Forum Boreum. A grim prodigy Livy preserves, yet the state did not collapse. Public mourning was restricted. Slaves were purchased, armed, and drilled. Survivors were forbidden to say, "We are beaten." The Senate thanked Varro for not despairing of the Republic, a line as hard as iron. Hannibal's lieutenant Maharbal urged a march on Rome. "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal. You do not know how to use it." But the army lacked siege engines and ladders, and allies still stood uncertain. So the victor harvested allies and wintered. Cannae remained what it was that afternoon, the most perfect tactical victory in antiquity, and the day Rome forgot how to breathe and learned, choking, how to endure. Rome outlawed grief and called it policy. In the days after Cannae, when the roads into the city were a procession of torn standards and blood, the Senate did the unthinkable. It forbade public mourning, sealed tears behind doors, and ordered the living to report for duty. Priests buried 2 Gauls and 2 Greeks alive in the Forum Boreum, a grim supplication to neglected gods. Then the Republic shut the ritual cupboard and turned to arithmetic Varro. The consul who escaped with a remnant was thanked not for victory, but for not despairing of the Commonwealth. The lesson was brutal and exact. Rome would not die of panic. Strategy hardened. The Senate made permanent what Fabius had preached after Trasimene. No more pitched battles with Hannibal. Armies would shadow, scorch, and starve. Towns would be garrisoned, depots rebuilt, and passes watched. The state combed its margins for bodies. Slaves were purchased and manumitted, the volones, on condition of service. Underage boys and men past prime filled new ranks. Debtors were released to take the oath. Standards destroyed at Cannae were replaced. The legiones, canenses, survivors stigmatized by defeat, were kept in field service far from Rome, punished with usefulness. Hannibal's shockwave cracked alliances. Capua, second city of Italy, opened its gates. Bruttian country and parts of Samnium shifted. In Sicily, the weather turned sullen, yet Rome fortified the line rather than chase mirages. Marcellus, the sword of Rome to Fabius's shield, fought contained actions, sting and step, while consuls parceled out war into defensive geometries. Garrisons at Nola and Neapolis, fleets on watch, grain moved under guard, treasuries scraped bronze from temple fittings. Noblewomen donated jewelry toward the levy. The censors' lists grew strange with freedmen's names in soldiers' slots. Across the sea lay the artery that kept Hannibal's Italian campaign alive, Iberia. There, since 218, Publius and Gnaeus Scipio had fought a separate war, harassing Hasdrubal Barca, intercepting couriers, cutting silver and recruits from the Ebro Valley. They won skirmishes, brokered tribal treaties, and held the line with too few legions against too many Barcid commanders. Then in 211 BCE, the seesaw broke. Publius, isolated near the upper Baetis, was overwhelmed by a mass of Celtiberian mercenaries bought away from his pay chest. Gnaeus, marching to join him, was trapped and destroyed northward near Ilorci. 2 commanders down, 2 armies wrecked. The road back to Italy briefly opened. The Republic did not fold. Even as Capua feasted Hannibal, Roman consuls coiled the siege ring. By 211, the city would fall and its elite pay in heads and exile. In Iberia, the Senate faced a command no one wanted and elected a 25-year-old survivor of Ticinus and Cannae, Publius Cornelius Scipio, to salvage the theater his father and uncle had bled for. The state that had outlawed grief now legislated endurance. No decisive clash with the undefeated enemy in Italy, relentless pressure on his lifeline abroad, and the slow mathematics of recovery, levy, garrison, harvest, pay, until fortune tilted again. Rome refused to die, not by miracle, but by policy. He took the command no Roman wanted and turned Spain into his proving ground. At 25, Publius Cornelius Scipio accepted the shattered Iberian theater, 210 BCE, the post that had killed his father and uncle, and asked for no extra legions, only auctoritas and speed. Rome expected a caretaker. Iberia got a predator. He struck where no one plans. Carthago Nova, modern Cartagena, the Barcid capital on a spit of land ringed by sea and lagoon, believed safe because water was a wall. In 209 BCE, he appeared before its ramparts after a forced march that outran rumor. While a frontal assault fixed Mago's garrison at the eastern gates, Scipio sent 500 picked men to the western lagoon, guided by local fishermen who knew the afternoon wind bled the basin nearly dry. As the tide fell, Romans waded chest deep, scaled an unguarded stretch, and opened the city from within. The prize was encyclopedic. The Barcid treasury, arsenals, shipyards, hostages, and elephants, plus a harbor now Roman. Then he did what Hannibal never did. He spent victory as diplomacy. Iberian hostages were released to their fathers with gifts. A famed episode names the chieftain Eleusius, whose betrothed Scipio returned untouched along with a dowry from the ransom. Garrisons were respectful but firm. Taxes were counted, not squeezed. Within months, tribes who had served Carthage for fear shifted for honor and advantage, and Scipio's supply lines fattened with grain, mules, and scouts. Campaign craft matched theater craft. In 208 BCE at Baecula, Upper Beatus, he seized the high ground above Hannibal Barca, struck in tiered assaults, and pushed the Barcid northward. Too late to prevent Hasdrubal's Alpine bid, but clean enough to keep Iberia tilting Roman. The decisive reckoning came in 206 BCE at Ilipa, near Seville, where Hasdrubal Gisco and Mago arrayed a larger force with their best African infantry in the center. Scipio rehearsed deception over days, then altered the grammar of Cannae. At dawn, he fed his men early and launched before the Carthaginians had breakfasted, driving out his cavalry and velitas to pin flanks. He placed his Roman and Italian heavy infantry on the wings, keeping allied Iberians in the center, and advanced the wings fast, refusing a decisive shove in the middle, as the Carthaginian Africans stepped forward to meet the seemingly weak Roman center. Scipio's strong flanks hooked inward, enfilading enemy wings and forcing the Africans to fight, hungry under javelin hail, and from a halt. Heat and dust did the rest. When the Carthaginian line tried to pivot, it found no space, no water, no time. The army that had kept Hannibal supplied broke, and Iberia, its silver mines, levies, and hostages, passed to Rome. Ilipa made a thesis: beat Hannibal by out-Hannibaling him. Speed, surprise, psychology, inside a Roman framework of discipline and logistics. Scipio left Spain not simply avenged, but re-engineered. Barcid power disassembled, Roman alliances stitched, and a young commander now carrying a new idea of what a Roman could be. The road from Cartagena's tide flats pointed one way, across the sea, to Africa. A severed head ended a dream and started an exodus. In 207 BCE, Hasdrubal Barca, Hannibal's brother, engineer of Iberian revenues, forced the Alpine gates to unite the Barcid armies in Italy. If the rendezvous held, Rome would face two Hannibals. It did not. Shadowing Hasdrubal's march, the consuls, Marcus Livius Salinator and Gaius Claudius Nero, performed the kind of audacity Romans usually feared. Nero slipped north with picked troops, leaving Hannibal contained in the south and fused with Livius overnight. At Metaurus in Umbria, the Romans caught Hasdrubal against a river and broken ground. His right anchored on a hill. His Iberians held but Nero, reading the stall, pulled cohorts from the quiet flank, marched them behind the Roman line, and smashed Hasdrubal's exposed side. The Carthaginian army folded. Hasdrubal died in the press, sword in hand. The Romans threw his head into Hannibal's camp, not as theater, but as message. The junction is cancelled. Hannibal, who had made consuls disappear, faced time as his new enemy. Rome, steadied by Fabius's discipline and blooded by Cannae's memory, now had a counterweight, a commander who fought like an innovator and supplied like a Roman Publius Cornelius Scipio. Having dismantled Barcid Spain, argued that the war would end only where it began, Africa. In 204 BCE, the Senate, grudgingly bold, let him sail from Sicily. He landed near Utica, struck alliances along the coast, and courted the prize that once made Hannibal invincible: Numidian cavalry. Numidia was a chessboard with two kings, Syphax of the Masaicili, newly tied to Carthage, and Massinissa of the Massiliae, first a Barcid client, now a realist. Scipio treated Numidians the way he had treated Iberians. Respect. Hostages returned. Promises backed by speed. In early 203, with Laelius and the lean, tireless Massinissa, he executed the night fires at Utica, a twin-camp strike that burned Syphax's and Hasdrubal Gisco's lodgings, scattering their coalition. When the Carthaginians reformed inland on the Great Plains, Campi Magni, Scipio refused a frontal grind. He pushed out velites and cavalry to harry, then drove his heavy infantry in ordered waves. Syphax's levies broke first. Hasdrubal Gisco fled. Massinissa pursued like a debt come due, capturing Syphax, who would soon ride in a Roman triumph. The board flipped. With Numidian horse now Roman, the one arm that closed Cannae belonged to Scipio. Carthage, its farms harried, its allies wobbly, its second army destroyed, sent frantic decrees across the sea. Hannibal must come home. After 16 years in Italy, the man who had unstitched Roman certainty embarked from Bruttium. He left behind a legend of undefeated campaigns and a dwindled cause. Scipio had turned Metaurus's negation into strategy, denied junctions, cut lifelines, seized cavalry, moved the theater. The long shadow of Hasdrubal's head now stretched across the Bagradas and Byzantium. Where the last act would be set, Africa would decide whether a child's oath at an altar could outlive its maker, or be extinguished by a new kind of Roman. An oath met its invoice on a flat African plain. At Zama, 202 BCE, the two minds that had reshaped Mediterranean war stood face to face. Hannibal, one-eyed and unbeaten in field command, offered terms Rome could boast about, but not accept. Scipio, young and implacable, answered with courtesy and refusal. Peace failed because both understood the arithmetic. With Numidia now riding for Rome and Carthage bled of veterans, negotiation would only launder a decision the battlefield was ready to print. Hannibal formed in 3 lines. Raw levies forward, sturdier Africans behind, and at the rear, the last treasure of Italy, veterans who had survived Trasimene and Cannae. Before them, he set elephants, dozens, not miracle beasts, but instruments of panic. Scipio arranged his maniples in columns with lanes left open like trap doors. When the elephants surged, the Romans sounded the trumpets, the intervals yawned, and the animals took the easy corridors, javelins biting from the flanks. Many turned back, smashing Carthage's own left. On the wings stood the decision. To Scipio's right, Gaius Laelius. To his left, Massinissa, now king and ally, commanding the Numidian light horse that had once sealed Roman doom at Cannae. Their cavalry met, broke, and pursued. Not carelessly, but far enough to clear the flanks. In the center, the infantry ground forward, Roman maniples pressing Hannibal's levies until they gave. The second Carthaginian line, uneasy, let the fugitives pass. Then veterans took the weight. For a time, the line stiffened. Shields locked. Pila turned to swords. The dust itself felt undecided. Scipio redressed his ranks. A second deployment in the middle of a killing widened the front and leaned again. That was the hour Hannibal needed his horse. Instead, the dust behind the Romans bloomed with returning riders. Laelius and Massinissa wheeled onto the Carthaginian rear. The old geometry inverted. What Hannibal had done to Rome at Cannae, Rome now did to him. A closing circle of infantry before and cavalry behind. The veterans fought to the rim and were dragged under it. The price was written the Roman way, in clauses. Carthage sued for peace. Terms: Warfleet surrendered, save a token 10. Elephants given up, an indemnity of 10,000 talents paid over 50 years. Hostages delivered, Massinissa's claims recognized, and the clause that mattered most: no war, inside Africa or out, without Roman leave. Carthage kept walls and markets but lost policy. It could trade, but not choose. The oath sworn by a 9-year-old at a smoky altar expired in dust, honored to the last possible breath. Rome learned something colder than victory: how not to lose again. The Republic retained Fabius's patience, Scipio's speed, and a new reflex to break rivals before they became problems. Hannibal slipped into exile, a strategist without a city. Carthage became commerce under supervision. On that plain at Zama, the Mediterranean's grammar changed. Elephants gave way to cavalry and coordination. Audacity bent to administration, and promises, whether a boy's vow or a city's boast, were finally priced, paid, and archived.